the old vine blocks that you find in each region truly is unique. Um, you can truly see the difference that different soils can have on such an old block, how it develops, and the ability it has to become an old vineyard block. So it really is a extremely fulfilling project to be a part of.
Hello, Madeleine.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Good, good.
It's so wonderful to meet you here on Zoom.
Definitely, me as well.
So, where are you based?
I am actually based in Worcester. It's just outside of the Kloof. I'm based right here in Worcester. It's actually quite central in the sense that you're basically more or less an hour's drive from most winemaking regions, which is quite convenient, being a viticulturist working in quite a wide area. So, yeah.
Well, I read actually about viticulture because it is something that I didn't know much about. And it's very interesting because I see that you work also very close with winemakers. And I always had this idea that the winemaker did, everything, but the viticulturist is actually very important in this whole process.
Yeah, I think in a strong sense, we definitely function in the background as part of the winemakers team. Mostly we will work very closely with the winemakers to identify their goals or styles they want to produce, making their wines, and then we would go out and either have vineyards to help assist in producing those grapes that has the specific qualities they're looking for, or either source it from different areas to ensure that they finally have their building blocks to have their final blend that they envisioned.
So that's a very scientific part of the job.
Yes, definitely. I think it's quite important in most cases. Most of the viticulturists also have quite a decent knowledge of the winemaking process as well, since that entire process is very important to keep in mind when you work in the vineyard itself, to ensure that the chemical composition of the grapes you're working with in specific areas and the challenges that might occur due to problems in the vineyard, the problems can go through to the wine, to the cellar in the end, and influence your winemaking process. So having that winemaking knowledge in the background is definitely crucial. And as you say, quite scientific in the end, to ensure that you have that perfect final product that you are looking for.
But now, what was the interest for you in viticulture?
To be honest, so when I went to go study, my course was at the University of Stellenbosch. I did my bachelor's in agricultural sciences for winemaking and oenology. And I finished that degree, and in our final year we do a practical of about 6 months with a cellar. And during that period, I mean, for me, I also always envisioned myself being a winemaker, but when I finally went to go do that practical, I think firstly the passion with which that viticulturist at that farm did his work was absolutely inspirational, but also being there outside in nature, understanding the vines better. Also, it's so interesting because each season you have a different climate, a different struggles or problems you have to find solutions for. Each block, each area, each season is different in the end. So that just fascinated me so much because it's ever changing, and you always have to think on your feet and really try and come up with solutions for quick solutions for certain problems, and that just fascinated me so much. And also the large influence you can have on your final wine from the vineyard side. Small manipulations that you can do in your canopy or during maybe if you have a block that can be irrigated, how you do your irrigation, etc. All of those little components can finally have a big influence on your final one. And that truly fascinated me in the end. And that's why after I finished my practical period, I ended up studying a bit further into in pathology as well, focusing on grapevine and grapevine diseases.
Well, you've just now proved exactly what I'm trying to get across through all the interviews, and that is that science and art is actually so close connected, because you're
Absolutely.
talking about the creativity that you need and the problem solving, and it's really an art what you're doing then.
Yeah, I have to agree. I myself really enjoy being creative, and I have a bunch of hobbies. So I really do think having a strong creative, maybe, I don't know, passions and stuff really helps you in the end, just like bringing out and being creative in the workplace and finding your solutions, because in the end there's so many aspects to the winemaking industry, but all of them are actually so creative, be it marketing, be it winemaking, be it actually viticulture, everything. It's a very creative industry, and I'm really honored to actually be part of it. It's truly really fulfilling.
Yeah, because you're saying now it's the weather, and it's the soil, and it's so many things that's part of this whole process, and yesterday I spoke to a winemaker in New Zealand, and like he said, at the one moment they thought they're going to have a wonderful harvest, and the next minute there was a flood, and they had they lost most of the grapes, and then it's that where do you take it then from there? Where do you take it in a crisis to make still wine, or the whole process? We never really think about that when we drink the wine, but there's such a great story behind that, and all the months and months of work that goes into the vineyard.
Yes, definitely. You really do get these unsuspected, nature really never gives you enough notice when it decides to do something interesting. In the 2020 season, or 2021 season, actually, basically when the harvest was about 3/4 way almost done, we had a ginormous amount of rain that fell, and I mean the resulting consequences, I mean rot, red grapes that end up struggling to ripen properly. It was like a crazy time to ensure everything still comes in decently enough for the winemakers to be able to make their wines. And we ended up having an exceptionally late harvest due to that amount of rain that fell, especially in some areas where we have quite heavy soils, and sometimes quite early in the season stop irrigation completely. That water basically just stayed in those berries and didn't want to budge. And so there was some interesting, solutions we had to come up with to ensure we have good quality wines to still put on the market. But nature never gives you that warning. But so it's always a constant reading of data and kind of reading nature and getting to know every certain area to ensure that you truly can assist your producers in adjusting to some almost natural disasters that tend to pass our way as we go along. The same with when it comes to frost in the winter, keeping an eye on your nighttime temperatures, etc., to ensure that the guys are ready to act and do something about those conditions, because you can have a disaster of a failed harvest if you end up basically not having any grapes. So it's always like a bit of problem solving and thinking of your feet going with this job, but it's so much fun.
So I'm thinking now that if I watch the weather report in the morning, it's because I wanted to know what to put on, what to dress. But you look at the weather and you think of your harvest and you think of the grapes.
It's such a big influence.
But now, are you involved in a winery, or are you in sort of freelance independent?
I am independent. I work. I'm part of Vine and Wine Solutions. It's a company that was started in 2018 by Leon Dippenaar. And we are then independent viticultural consultants, supplying our clients a service from kind of A to Z. And so we do have specific cellars that we then work with, be it estates or cooperative cellars. And we also do a bit of a precision farming service to our clients as well. And then we are also a bit involved on the marketing of wine side, but in the end, our main focus is the viticultural support we supply to our clients.
Okay. And I see that you are also involved in old vines, or you have an interest in that.
Yes. So a couple of our clients do take part in the Old Vine project. Especially the Toits Cellar, we worked closely with getting their Old Vine wines ready to go and kind of support them in the project. Basically, what we tend to do is, since Old Vine, to be able to be registered as our Old Vine vineyard, a block needs to be 35 years old. And also in the case of the Toits Cellar, we identified some blocks that were close to that age and already started proactively planning and brainstorming to get two marketable products ready to, by the time they were old enough to get registered, we were able to get that project on its feet. So we're also always trying to remain vigilant of older blocks that have a lot of potential to really produce for many years to come. Sometimes you do have a situation where blocks simply just don't have the energy anymore to remain in the soil, or sometimes basically maybe it was just a bad soil preparation those days that happened, so it just doesn't have the ability to remain a really sustainable block for many more years. But as soon as we do find or identify blocks that has good potential, good wine vinification capabilities, we really start to kind of, what would you say?
So develop it.
Develop it, try and preserve it. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for. Try and preserve the block to ensure that you have many more years where you can utilize that block, and then also try and assist in the almost production planning side or product development side of the process. But it's a very interesting process, especially since we do work quite broadly, and your different winemaking regions, the old vine blocks that you find in each region truly is unique. You can truly see the difference that different soils can have on such an old block, how it develops, and the ability it has to become an old vineyard block. So it really is a extremely fulfilling project to be a part of, because also whatever you're busy with, it's really something that will go on into the future. You're actually just starting with the project, even though that vineyard is already old, because that wine needs to keep on going and keep on developing, and so that's truly a fun part of this project.
So you have to also now teach or advise the farmer on how to preserve this, and because what I've heard is that some of these old vines can get sort of viruses or bugs or illnesses. I don't know what you call it in a
You do get there are in terms of viruses, a couple that can be quite sad for vines to get, because it truly strongly influences your wine quality, like red leaf roll virus, leaf roll virus, sorry. And then also fungal trunk diseases. That's where hygienic pruning practices are extremely important, because those fungal diseases can truly just completely eviscerate a block quite easily. It's quite important. That's why I think pruning truly is one of the most important things to keep in mind when working with these old vine blocks, apart from nutrition like soil health, but because you really need to preserve the integrity of the wood of the vine, to ensure a successful and effective flow of water and nutrients up and down the vine, from the roots to the leaves and vice versa, to ensure good berry development, good flavor development in those berries, and the longevity of the vines. So an important thing to keep in mind working with these vines is to never do any almost extreme adjustments. You really need to kind of work with the vine in a sense. When you're pruning, never make extremely large cuts. I mean, just like a human, the bigger the wound, the more difficult it is to remain healthy or to get healthy. So always being gentle with the vine, reading the vine, letting it tell you where it wants to go. In the end, it is a vine. It's a crawling plant. It will guide you. to where it wants to go. So yeah, pruning really is one of the most important activities you can do to effectively ensure longevity of your vineyard block. And then with that, maybe applying some wound protectants and stuff after pruning, just to give that extra insurance that you keep the integrity of your wood healthy, or keep the integrity of the wood of the vine. Yeah.
So how open are the farmers to this, to keep in the vine? Because it's for them also sometimes not financially viable.
Yeah. So it definitely is a process, but if us from almost the viticultural support and then wine cellar side are able to successfully ensure to put a marketable product on the shelf that makes it worthwhile for that individual or that specific farmer to keep that block, we tend to be able to motivate them in the process, because I think a lot of the times, in many cases, you have a large sentiment, or the farmers do have a large sentiment to their farms and to some of those blocks. I mean, if I'm thinking of a specific one block now of one of our cellars, that's the farmer that is currently farming on the farm, his father planted that block, and since then his father has passed away. But I mean, that heritage and that kind of legacy is special. So as long as you can really ensure that you can support them, firstly, with maintaining that block, and also ensure that you're able to put a marketable product on the shelves for them, it's not that maybe difficult to get them on board, because it is a unique quality they can add to a cellar, or add to the collection of the cellar they are specifically producing their grapes for. So no, that's why it's quite important for us to almost proactively identify blocks also that would in the future be good blocks to have as old vine blocks, even though they don't qualify yet, but rather getting a producer to keep that block for another 5 or 10 years, because you really truly can see the potential it has to remain in the soil even longer. That's almost a bigger challenge than keeping a old block that's already maybe qualified. But it is possible. It just takes a bit of work and a bit of effort to motivate them.
But I think it's wonderful that you now foresee it, that you say, okay, so if you can keep this one for another 5 to 10 years, this is what you will end up then having. And I think also from the consumer side, if the consumer understands what the old vine is, the wines from the old vine, that this would be a more, that this will be a sought after item, and that would be then also financially feasible for the farmer.
Definitely. That's why the concept of the Old Wine Project that they created, or the project they created, and being able to register a block with a legitimate entity, I think has a lot of value, because it also internationally, if you compare us to a lot of the winemaking regions, South Africa is actually very young. So to be able to then compete almost at a certain level in terms of what our industry have been able to achieve over the years that we have been producing wine. I think the Old Vine Project concept definitely assists in that sense, that we are not just here for quick light wines that are just high production stuff. We are truly here for quality and longevity.
Yeah, and also, like you say, all that goes behind the scenes to get that wine in the bottle, that is also something that we have to consider as well when we buy the wine, and if it's a good quality wine. But now about organic farming, because a lot of wineries now are certified organic, or they try to certify themselves as organic. How important do you think this is that wine farmers and winemakers go that route, the sustainable and eco-friendly route?
I think in the long run, since not even in a sustainable way, but just the reality of the industry, the expenses becoming just higher and higher to be a farmer, chemical sprays that need to be applied to protect your crops, fertilizers that need to be applied to ensure good yields. With our fuel prices skyrocketing as they do, I do think it is something that needs to be developed going ahead. I think in the past, it was maybe just a niche thing that some people were doing, but I think it's becoming more and more the reality almost for everyone to really reconsider how they do their daily activities. That's one of the reasons we also, it's not that it's organic, but one of the reasons we do supply a precision viticultural service to our clients is to ensure to reduce unnecessary application of fertilizers where it's not needed, to only pinpoint spots and apply it as needed instead of having these blanket applications of fertilizers, for example, and having it leach into your water. And also the expense, to lower those expenses. So organic farming really does come with a lot of challenges because you are so limited into what activities and applications you can do. So I think it's definitely something that we need to look into developing further to make it easier for producers to consider becoming organic farmers. Yeah.
I sometimes think also it's even if it's one or two things that can change, then and everybody does the same thing, then it's then it's this chain reaction where it then benefits everybody.
Definitely, slowly but surely, we are seeing more and more almost organic-like practices that start to develop, or more environmentally friendly practices that becomes standard practices for conventional farmers. It's not that they are necessarily organic farmers. For example, the management of certain pests, and then using natural predator bugs, releasing natural predator bugs to manage those pests instead of doing chemical sprays, for example. So there's a lot of practices that are almost naturally becoming part of even conventional farmers' daily activities, even though they are not organically certified. Yeah.
But now you've got a few bottles of wine there behind you. Tell me about them.
I just had a couple listening from actually two of our clients. So I figured I'll just show them off a bit.
Definitely.
So one of the reasons I kind of decided on having these two actually is also because they are from two different regions. This is from the Toits Cellar, which is a winery in Viticulturist, and this is Perdeberg Cellar, Perdeberg Cellar, which they do they are quite broad, but the old wine block that they use for this one is located just outside of Paarl. And what's interesting about these two regions, if I compare these two, these are both of the old vine Shannons. The Toits ones is labeled under the Quest range, and then Perdeberg, it's the Dryland collection. It's called the Courageous Old Vine Barrel Fermented Chenin Blanc. And to me, the interesting thing about working with both of these blocks is firstly the soil you are working with in each case. The Dryland collection block is planted on soils that have a much higher clay content and also have a much better ability to absorb water and also then slowly release the water back to the vines. Whereas this Chenin in the Viticulturist is basically planted in more of a loamy, sandy soil because of most of the Viticulturist used to be either a riverbed or a piece of marshlands.
Really?
If that's the correct English word, I'm not. And so this Viticulturist Chenin has been under irrigation from the start, for example, whereas our Perdeberg Chenin is a dryland Chenin, so it doesn't get any irrigation it doesn't get any irrigation. And the Dryland collection Chenin is also a bush vine. So you all automatically have a much smaller canopy you're working with for your vine. They're very strong vines. We do find that they age better, the bush vines in the end, because you sometimes have also like much less pruning winds and things you have to worry about getting infection. So they do really age well. And this Viticulturist Chenin, it's your traditional vertical trellising system, VSP, and that as well as the Sauvignon Blanc are trellised vineyards. And in the end, one of the quotes I've read also, André Morgenthal says, is that when it comes to these old vineyards, they're not necessarily they don't necessarily show the cultivar as strongly as they do show the area that it comes from.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why it's quite interesting tasting when you taste these two vines, even though they're both Chenin. The one block is about 9 years older than the other, but you can get completely different characters that develop. When you look at the Viticulturist one, with the Viticulturist being a much cooler area than the Achterparel region, you do have some like lovely citrus aromas that developed almost in that cooler climate that you don't necessarily get from the Swartland area, but the Achterparel area. But in the Achterparel, you get much stronger, sweeter, more robust flavors that do develop. So that's these two wines. And then one I also have here is the Toits Old Vine Sauvignon Blanc. And what makes this one quite special is that it's the only old vine Sauvignon Blanc in the Viticulturist region. So the Toits as a cellar in the about around like the 1970 mid 70s, they decided to break away a bit from the Viticulturist's more traditional cultivar trends. And the cellar itself is located quite closely to the Toits Pass, just by the very high mountains, and they tend to be quite cooler and have also like shorter daylight hours. So they decided to kind of branch into Sauvignon Blanc. And actually to this day, or at this point, they are one of the largest producers of bottled or packaged Sauvignon Blanc in South Africa. And this specific old vine Sauvignon Blanc is then one of the first blocks that were planted back then when they kind of moved into the cultivar for the cellar, and also the only one that still remains. So this makes this one also quite a unique story to it. Yeah.
Do you know, I love the stories behind the wine. I think this is part of the wine, this is part of because if you know the story also, I think this will also affect the taste, what you taste, or how you taste. Yeah. But it's interesting. Yeah. I've also heard that the wines from the old vines are a stronger wine. Is that true? That's concentrated more the taste.
Definitely. I think it's also maybe a combination of most of the old vine cultivars being some of the older clones, as well as then the vines themselves. As they age, they start producing smaller bunches with less berries and also smaller berries. So you do have a more concentrated flavor that develops, also then improving their ageability and their ability to be fermented in wood. So they definitely develop in quite interesting wines that you can age quite well due to the concentration and chemical structure that develops as it ages, or as the vine ages.
Yeah. And is it mostly white wines?
In South Africa, the registered, if I'm correct, the registered old vine blocks are more dominantly white blocks. I think that's mostly due to our leaf roll virus problems that we do have in South Africa. In most cases, the Chenin and Sauvignon Blanc, especially those two cultivars, tend to be, at least, it's not that they are resistant, but they are not as sensitive to symptoms, and then manage to at least age well. But there are obviously some red blocks, but they are far and few in between. Yeah.
But so when a vine, for example, get a virus like the rolled leaf, is it then over? You cannot save it.
Yeah. Basically, yes. The vine doesn't have a metabolism that will be able to kind of destroy the virus. And the virus itself spreads through the vine basically immediately. When you compare it to fungal diseases, you might have almost a little part of the vine that sometimes get infected, and you can almost, with vine surgery, kind of remove your infected part and still be able to maybe save the vine. But with the leaf roll virus, I mean, it's not like the vine basically dies, but it influences its ability its ability to function, all its metabolic processes, the way its ability to photosynthesize, its ability to develop flavor, its ability to ripen your grapes gets influenced and becomes less and less effective with time. And that's usually why a red block's lifespan will quickly shorten when it gets virus, because in the end you also have problems with production, and the little grapes that remain on that vine basically doesn't ripen at all.
But now, Madeleine, this is very interesting what you do. You've got an amazing job, and I think you did the right choice to go and because you go into the vineyards and you're probably outside every day amongst
basically admin days are for rain days. Then we'll do some admin, but otherwise we're basically outside all the time.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's lovely.
But now tell me, what are your wishes for the future?
In South Africa, after all the period of alcohol bans and everything that we went through, I have to say there are definitely some sellers and producers that are truly struggling to recover from this period, because the effect of it is only really almost coming to the surface now, just after everything happened. And so yeah, it is a worry that some of our producers and wine cellars simply won't recover from the situation we had. But my hope mostly is that even if it becomes a case of a farmer having to diversify a bit on the farm or something, that those guys can remain on their farms, because basically we can't do what we do and have this lovely industry we have without them. So I think that will be my biggest hope for the future. And then also in general, just I think we live in South Africa's wine industry is quite developed on the technological front. If I look at the agricultural, the technology that we already apply in the fields, and it's just based on just the companies that take initiative in South Africa and develop things and apply them and adjust them for our needs. We are really very well developed. So I do hope that type of passion for problem solving and drive to I don't know what to better our industry remains, because truly frequently you'll see some technology becoming trending in a certain country, and then we're already applying it. We're already in our small way, we are already developing that technology. So I think the people that work in our industry in South Africa are really gems, and they truly have a passion for our industry.
Yeah, but I think I spoke to Etienne Netling as well, and he said that, because of the climate and the way of farming, that some of the European countries will now start looking at countries like South Africa, like Australia, like New Zealand, for the way they farm in these conditions and these temperatures. So that's in a way a positive, that you are
Definitely.
already ahead when it comes to global warming and the temperatures that changing.
Definitely. There's a lot of, I think, practices that we or our producers already see as everyday practices that I think a lot of the winemaking regions, especially in Europe, where they are experiencing more and more drought conditions, that it's a completely new concept to them.
Yeah.
Our soil health and soil water management is very well developed, especially after the drought we had the last couple of years, just before COVID hit. We basically came out of the drought into COVID. So yeah, I have to say you can see that our producers, our farmers are really mindful of those practices. And as I say, for them, it's everyday practices. It's not even something new to them at this point. And then coming back to like your question about organic farming, that's what I also mean with that the label of organic farming is definitely important, but just some of the practices, if just more of those practices can be applied to our guys, our conventional farmers, there are definitely a lot of stuff that can be used back and forth between the two methods of farming.
Yeah, and I think it's some of the winemakers that I spoke to also acknowledge that, even if it's a few things that you do, but you do it on a constant basis, then it starts getting, okay, now the next step, and it then
definitely,
then it creates this chain of it all working together, and then in the end, it's a complete process then that you have.
Definitely. It does take a lot of time, every single thing you implement, because in the end, a grapevine is also a plant that luckily doesn't die immediately, or it doesn't also revitalize immediately. It does happen over time and over a couple of seasons, but you do see the results of the small, even the smallest differences that the producers apply.
Now, I have one more question for you. Can you do a shout out for a restaurant or a coffee shop where you go frequently?
Ooh.
Are you a coffee drinker?
I'm a big coffee drinker.
Okay.
If I have to give a shout out, it's not a specific coffee shop, but maybe a local brand of coffee, Bootlegger. That is Bootlegger. That is close to my heart.
Okay.
Since I drive a lot between farms and all around, so takeaway coffee is big on my. You find your spots along your routes that you usually stop by, and that's definitely one of my favorites.
Is it like a coffee to go place?
Coffee, they make the coffee beans and but they also have a couple of coffee shops.
Okay.
Yeah.
Madeleine, this was so lovely to talk to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Petra.
And all the best with all your work and your great work with the Old Vine project.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always such a good initiative.
Yeah, no, definitely. But have a lovely evening.
You too.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.